Well, ahoy hoy, and welcome back to On the Bench, where, for the second time recently, we are once again on the bench on the road, because, as we've said before, occasionally Muhammad must come to the mountain. As ever, this is not an unboxing video. The watch we're looking at today has been thoroughly worn, tested. In fact, it has been a daily wearer for many years for the owner. It has just come back from servicing though, which is why we're having a look at it today, before it once again resembles an ice hockey puck. And they've done a fantastic job. But before we get into the watch itself, we're going to take a look at the extra little bits it came back with from servicing, because this may not be something you've seen before in videos. So let's take a look at this before we have a look at the beautiful Rolex Submariner Date that's inside the main box. Firstly, if you service your Rolex at the moment, you get a very nice glossy book that it comes back with, all about the servicing process. Basically, if you get a Swiss or any decent watch service by the main dealer or a decent watchsmith, they will essentially disassemble the watch. It comes completely apart, the movement comes apart, the bracelet comes apart, it's cleaned, ultrasonically cleaned, and then reassembled, polished up all the way around. You get a brand new watch coming back, as long as that's what you want. For a classic Rolex, or something like the 70s, 80s, with nice patina on it, okay, you may not want that, and you can discuss with them the sort of level that you want them to go to with the service. You might just want the gaskets changing to keep it waterproof and the movement servicing, but it's entirely up to you. But this has had a full service top to bottom, and it's come back with the Rolex card and this extra Rolex box, which I was very interested to see when it arrived. Inside which, as well as the service card, which I'm not going to show on screen because it's got the service numbers on it that are individual to the watch, it has this lovely travel case, which it came back with. And that's a really nice touch. It's not something I've personally seen before. Now, they may have been using these for years, and I'm just well behind the times, but it's a lovely thing for them to throw in, and you'd expect something for the price. For those of you who are interested, the full service of this watch to bring it back up to Concours standard cost pretty much dead on £1,000 UK. It took month, 6 weeks-ish for the turnaround time from Rolex UK to get it back to us, but money well spent. Let's take a look at the main box. We have a fairly plain cardboard outer sleeve. This may not be an original Rolex outer sleeve. It may be, it may not. I'm not sure with the year whether it was a printed one or just a plain white one like this. Maybe this has come from the dealer. This watch was bought direct from dealer, from new though. However, this is not a second-hand watch. It's not one that's been flipped or grey market. This is from the day when you could actually walk into a dealership and buy a Rolex. And I appreciate, if you're fairly new to watches, you might think, oh God, did such a thing exist? Yes, it did. Let's have a look inside the sleeve. Next, inside the sleeve, we have another cardboard outer box, very plain, apart from the Rolex logo on the top. It also has some stickers on the side, which again are individual to this watch, so I'm not going to show those on the camera. And finally, in a pass the parcel style, we have the main famous green in a Rolex box. There is also the case candy that it came with. It's usually sitting on the outside of the box. That's the original receipts, the original warranty card, which again I'm not going to show on a video, but it's an iconic design. If you're familiar with Rolex boxes, I'm sure it's very, very familiar to you. It's extremely well made. A beautiful shade of green, which does come out a little bit different on camera than it is in real life. It's a bit more moss to medium green than it is turquoisey shade that appears on the screen, but it's a beautiful box, and let's get inside it. And here we have it, the 2012 model Rolex Submariner Date, and absolutely stunning it is. Freshly back from servicing, all the nicks, scratches, little dinks that it had caught up over the years, all gone, and pretty much looking factory fresh. So let's have a chat about the watch, and then we'll have a chat about its features, etc., and the general state of Rolex in 2022 when we are filming this. Let's start with the watch. The Submariner of 2012 is the reference number 116610LN, the LN one being particularly for this date version. The one without the LN is the standard no date version. In its 2012 guise, it has a 40mm case with applied indices, date window, and the classic magnifying cyclops that you can see at the top. It features the traditional Rolex cathedral loomed hands and a 120 quick bezel, which is made of a material called cerachrome or cerachrome, depending on how you pronounce it. Highly scratch resistant stuff. It's also very fade resistant, and you can really see this compared to other models of other makers that you see of a similar age. Even before this went to service, yes, it had some nicks on it, but it still had a very, very vivid black colour. It holds its colour very, very well and does the job, which is why they use it. The bezel is a 120 click unidirectional bezel. Most divers are, meaning it moves one way and one way only. And it's a pleasure to use. If you've never used one of these, if you come across someone with a real Rolex Submariner on the wrist, see if you can borrow it and just have a play with the bezel, because just the movement of it is phenomenal. It's buttery smooth to push round. Just the right amount of tautness on it. It's not loose enough for you to accidentally push, but loose enough for you to very easily move when you have diving gloves on and it's being used for the role that it should be used. 120 clicks means you can set this to 30-second increments. More accurate timing if you are a really nitpicky diver, or nitpicky desk diver, most likely, as I am. In contrast with things like the Tudor, which is often compared to it, the Tudor Black Bay. That's got a 60-click unidirectional bezel. So this has twice the amount of clicks on the way around. So more accurate if you want a time to a 30-second increment rather than a 1 minute. The case is a mix of brushed steel on the top and polished steel on the sides, which continues down the side of the links. As you can see, being polished, it is an absolute fingerprint magnet, but I've done my best to remove them before we've started the video. Now, the metal is a very particular kind of metal. You will see that many, if not most, sports watches, it's not a sports watch, it's a tool watch, but there we go, are made from 316L steel, which is a standard, good, solid, good value for money, hard-wearing watch steel. Now, this is Oyster steel, which is essentially Rolex's proprietary blend, a bit like their own brand of coffee or own blend of whiskey. It's a steel that is unique to them, and it is a particular recipe, and it gives a beautiful luster to the brushed parts and a fantastic polished surface to the sides. Quite unlike normal 316L steel when you have it in hand. Is it quite up to the polishing that you can get on, let's say, a Grand Seiko? Possibly not, but it's still a real step up. It belongs to the 904L family of steel, we know that much. It's very anti-corrosive. It has the properties we discussed about. It doesn't like scratches. It's a great choice and a beautiful metal for them to use. But that's about as much as we know about the actual components of the Oyster steel. A bit like Coca-Cola, you can't just walk up to them and say, hello, I'm a YouTuber, can I have the recipe please? You're just not going to get anywhere. This Submariner has 1,000 feet of water resistance, which is partially achieved by the screw down crown with the Rolex logo perfectly applied on the end. We also have crown guards, as this is a working diver's watch. The bracelet is also Oyster steel. As we've already said, it has polished end links and screws rather than pins. Again, bear in mind, this is a tool watch, which we'll come back to later. It is very solidly built. We have a solid caseback, which generates, I think, an equal number applause from one side of the aisle and groans from the other, because it means you can't see the beautiful movement that's powering this. But again, there's reasons for that, and I'm on Rolex's side with this one. But once again, we'll come back to that in a minute. Now, powering this 2012 number is, I believe, the 3135 movement. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong with that. It is a 31 jewel movement and has been upgraded to COSC certification as opposed to the prior ones, which were not, with a 48-hour thereabouts power reserve once fully wound. So what's the allure of this watch? It is, for many people, the watch to get. And status symbol and flexing we're going to come back to, but from a collector's point of view or a diver's point of view, it just gets everything right. It looks fantastic. It's absolutely bomb-proof. It goes deep, and it has an extra feature at the back, which we're going to talk about now. And that extra feature is this clasp, which is very, very clever and also very much patented, which is why you don't find it on other watches. Let me show you what it does. It opens just like a normal clasp watch would do, but remember this was designed as a working diver's tool watch. Now that means it's coming off and on wrists quite often when people are at work. It needs to go from bare skin to over a wetsuit, over a dry suit, back again, and you don't want to be faffing around in a boat with spring pins and little pins to push in to alter it as you would do with any other diving watch. And this is where their patented system comes in for quickly altering the size of a Submariner. At the back of the clasp where it meets the bracelet is where on any other diving watch you would expect to find a series of small holes with spring pins, which is where you can move this bracelet forwards or backwards to adjust it slightly to the size of your wrist, particularly in warmer weather. But you just can't do that on a boat. It's not practical. So what they came up with is a ratcheting system. Whereas if we clip this off and then look underneath, you can see these ratchets underneath. And this then slides up and down so smoothly and gives you a very large range of travel to widen it when you're putting on your diving suit, and then bring it back down to your normal wrist side when you get back on the boat, and then just clip into place, and it's back and secure. Very clever, very patented. And now, are there any issues with this watch? Well, those of you who are regulars to the channel will know I don't pull my punches with things I don't like on watches. And no, I really enjoy this watch. It's a beautiful watch. It's a fantastic design. My issue is with Rolex and the alleged behaviour and actions of their authorised dealers. So let's talk about that for a minute. Now this is a 2012 model back from the day when you could walk into Rolex and buy one. Yes, if you wanted something fiddly, you want something in solid gold or gold baguettes on the dial, there might be a bit of a wait period, but if you had the money, you could buy pretty much whatever you want. And bear in mind that even though Rolexes now are lauded over the internet as the ultimate flex machine, they're still quite budget when it comes to Swiss watches. And sorry if I've any bubbles of people there by saying that, and there's people now screeching at the screen. They're not particularly expensive in the world of Swiss watches. We've got a watch coming up before long here. I've actually filmed it already, but it'll be a little while before it's edited down and on the channel, that you could have 9 of these retail price for the cost of this other watch that's coming up. Rolex aren't part of the holy trinity of Swiss watches. That means there's nothing wrong with them. It just means there's a bit more hype and a bit more name than necessarily there is watch at some times. Now, back in the day, before these became, again, the best flex that an internet YouTuber or crypto bro could get their hands on by the dozen, some of the models you really couldn't sell very well. The Kermit, when it came out, wasn't particularly popular. The grape-faced Oyster Perpetual, which is still, no offence, awful colour in my opinion, but yeah, if you got one, fair game. You couldn't give them away. They were sat in shop windows for months and months with nobody wanting to pick them up, and you could get a discount on them. This was actually bought at a discount of £250. Walking in off the street. It was back when Rolex could actually be afforded and purchased by your average men on the street. So what happened? Well, along came crypto bros and social media money, and suddenly, boom, they bought the pretty much entire world's supply of these things. If it had Rolex on it, these things were being bought by the dozen, never mind the single, and being treated like cryptocurrency, hoarded because it's an investment, not because they had any interest in the watch. They've clearly shown that by the fact they're buying 12, 15 of these things at the time. And unfortunately, that's being enabled, or was enabled, by authorised dealers, because they're a ready source of cash. They know they're good for the money. You want to buy 10 of these at once, I get a big paycheck, and allegedly a stiff backhander under the table. Yeah, I'll take that deal. And then these new moneyed people became flippers, or scalpers, as you could argue, and started listing them by the dozen on resale websites, and resale value went through the roof. This watch now will cost you 2.5 times the cost it did originally from the authorised dealer, which is loopy when you think about it. These are one of the few watches, Rolexes, in terms of brands, which have gone up year on year. Now that's changing at the moment, but they've gone up because there simply isn't the supply there. There are the famous lists that you'll be expected to beg to get on through an authorised dealer. And there are allegations, which are very much true as far as I'm concerned. We have to say allegations, that authorised dealers are essentially taking backhanders for them. You can join this never-ending list and never get the watch you've asked for, or we can have a chat about just how much other money you're going to spend with my watches or jewellery that you didn't want in the first place. But if you want one of these, you're going to shell out for that. Another allegation is that authorised dealers are taking payments under the table for these things. So ringing £8,000 through the till and taking £2,000 under the table, or £2,000 in gift vouchers for certain websites named after the river that you can probably think about already, or experience days that are paid for them. Or even worse, they're selling this directly to flippers for a percentage of the final sale price after they've sold it on. Whatever way they're doing it, the system of Rolex has been broken for a very long time. You just can't walk in and buy one of these. And it's such a shame, because it's a wonderful watch and it's a tool watch. These were never supposed to be a luxury brand. This was for the working person who needed an absolutely bomb-proof tool watch. But after the quartz crisis, they reinvented themselves as a luxury brand. They were never cheap, but they weren't like this in terms of scarcity and resale value. And Rolex are part of the problem. They just haven't addressed the issue. Have they upped production? No, they've kept it the same. They don't care who's buying their watches, just as long as it's not you. And you have this incredibly weird situation where you have this catch-22 where the only way to buy a Rolex is to already have a Rolex from that same dealer. But the only way to have that in the first place is by owning a Rolex, which you just can't get a look in. Such a shame to see. Have you had this? Have you found this with trying to buy one? Have you managed to buy one? Was it the one you wanted? Did you have to settle for a lesser Rolex with the promise of the one you wanted a bit later if you bought that one in the first place? Let me know in the comments. You will also find that some authorised dealers now are not providing the warranty cards with these watches when they sell them, if and when they do. This is to prevent flipping. So the ones that are slightly more honest, you could argue, are keeping them back, because if that person comes back to them within 2 weeks and says, actually, I want the papers, I've suddenly changed my mind, I'm going to flog it on for a third, twice the price that I paid for it, they can then blacklist that person and not sell them another watch. It's not an ideal solution, but hey, it's getting somewhere. And it needs doing, arguably, because we're expected to believe, as watch fans, as potential Rolex customers, that it's entirely accidental. Entirely. That almost every watch, it seems, or a very large percentage of them sold, seem to go directly into the hands of grey market dealers or flippers or scalpers. It's just the way it is, you know. We just get it wrong every time. Yeah, right. But over to you. What do you think of the Submariner? Is it your Grail watch? If so, why? And what's your tactic going to be for getting hold of one? Are you going to bite the bullet and try and get one from a dealer? See if you can join that never-ending list and see if you can beat it. Or are you going to take one for the team and buy one grey market and just pay that extra money? As I said, this will now cost you 2.5 times what the original sale price was, which is absolutely loopy. Now, would I have one? Absolutely. Would I like one? Yes, it's a beautiful watch. I do enjoy them, and I probably will add a Rolex at some point. But I'm not paying over list price for it. And if I can't get it for list price, then no thank you very much. I'll take my money next door to Amiga, thank you, and buy what I want to buy, same day, without having to beg a company to take my money. But for now, get involved in the comments. Let me know what you think. My name is Jim. As ever, I've been your host, and until I speak to you soon, do take care.